Welcome to the video today, guys. We're going to discuss how useful Judo is for self-defense. A lot of the points that I raised in previous videos about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling for self-defense are also relevant for Judo, so check those out in the links below. The first thing that Judo does very well is it prepares you for how to fall correctly in order to minimize injuries. Beginners at the beginning of their training often complain that they're just falling and falling and falling in their Judo training and not learning any techniques. However, this is extremely useful because it actually helps you prevent injuries. You can see that a lot of these Judo throws are extremely spectacular and very deadly, so you need to know how to land correctly in order to minimize injury. When you think of this in a self-defense situation, particularly on the street or any hard surface, you need to know how to land correctly so that you can minimize injury, get back up and continue your struggle. In a lot of self-defense situations, you also need to think that sometimes you are actually forced to engage with an opponent. Often when a striker is facing opponents and he can strike, he can also run and get away from there. But when you are grabbed, you therefore have to know how to engage with your opponent because you have no choice. Someone has grabbed hold of you. There's maybe a street thug that grabbed hold of your clothing and you have to know what to do from there. If you grab hold of a judoka, you have just made the biggest mistake of your life because you will get thrown into another dimension by them. This has happened to me and it's probably one of the most painful experiences I've had in my life. When you get thrown by someone who's proficient in judo, it's pretty much lights out. So, adding these techniques to your arsenal will of course be very useful in your self-defense training. Judo also has newaza, which is very similar to the groundwork seen in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. A lot of the techniques and submissions that you see in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu also exist in Judo, and this is because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu comes from Judo, so you also have the triangle choke and the armbar, for example, in Judo. So you'll learn a lot of submissions as part of your training, which can be very useful from a self-defense perspective. Another great aspect of Judo is that you have randori, which is sparring, which is something that of course exists in other grappling arts, but it doesn't exist in all martial arts. Sparring is extremely useful and it's something you should look for when choosing a combat sport, because if you don't have the opportunity to actually practice your techniques against a resisting opponent, you won't know whether they work or not. And another key thing that you develop from sparring is timing, because with timing, that's actually how you get your techniques to work. A lot of other martial arts, they might have a lot of techniques that look very nice, but if you don't actually get to practice using them against a resisting opponent, you won't be proficient at using them when you're actually in a stressful situation. So this is an extremely important factor that you should definitely not overlook. In conclusion, I would say that Judo is an extremely useful art to learn when considering self-defense. It's a course not complete because it is a grappling art, so it doesn't have any striking, which could come in handy when you're facing multiple opponents. The easiest way to remedy this, though, is of course to add some striking to your Judo training in order to make your training more complete.